Hey, your backup plan tribe. Welcome to our awesome show, our awesome podcast this week with an exceptional, beautiful guest that, of course, our title is Lessons Learned the Hard Way. Yes, we always learn difficult lessons, and we always seem to learn them the most difficult way that there is. I'm not sure why. There must be a theory around that somewhere, of course. But if you are new here, welcome. Welcome to your backup plan tribe, Talking Taboo with Tina. It's always so difficult to say. Brought to you by your backup plan. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for watching our shows. My name is Tina Ginn. I am an emergency preparedness coach, a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. Yes, everything happens in the blink of an eye. That's right. Everything seems to do that. I'm a financial expert and an app developer of Your Backup Plan app. And I'm located here in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So welcome. Say thank you so much to our United States and Canada listeners, as well as our upcoming countries that keep on moving up the ladder, like Germany. Welcome German listeners. Welcome to our community. Meine deutsche Freunde in unserem Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also danke für deine Freundschaft. Thank you so very much for listening. Ireland and Sweden is going to be next, and I'll be practicing whichever one beats the other one. I will be doing that accent as well. I'll definitely need some help and guidance around that one. So welcome. We what do we focus on Talking Taboo with Tina? Of course, raw conversations that are real with our listeners about the guest's journey from a life-changing event in their life. Yes. So I am so excited to let you know that our guest today is going to be really delving deep into spinal cord injury and what that looks like for individuals. It's quite common, and I'm surprised that there isn't more discussion around that. And I'm so thankful and blessed to be able to bring that to our listeners today, to be able to hear the other side of what it's like. Your Backup Plan app puts your life all in one place so that it's for any unpredictable circumstance. What could that be? It could be a car accident. It could be hearing the cancer word, or heart attack, or stroke, or a disability, or coma, or wildfire, which is just unbelievable in the Pacific Northwest, all the way from California to Oregon to Washington State and to British Columbia and Alberta right now. It's crazy with the amount of crazy wildfires that are going on. People are being evacuated. People are losing their homes. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, as well as I'd like to say send out my prayers and my love to all those in the Surfside condo collapse in Florida in the last month. That was a horrible tragedy. And I would like to also put out my wishes to all those affected by the awful floods that have been happening in China, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, all around the world. It's a crazy world out there this summer. And if we didn't have enough with COVID, they just threw us some more stuff that we have to deal with. So I would like to move on and bring on our special guest. Your backup plan will help you put all of that stuff into one place so that it's accessible for you when you really need it the most, because you never know what the unexpected, expect the unexpected, because that's really what life is from one day to the next. So on that note, I would love to bring in Marjorie Aunos. She is from beautiful Montreal, Canada, not very far from me, actually.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hi, Tina.
Hi, Marjorie. I am so excited to have you on our show today. I'm just going to give everyone a little beautiful introduction from us here. Marjorie Aunos is a Ph.D, is a psychologist, inspirational speaker, author, and researcher from Montreal, Canada. Her expertise is working with patients with, I'm going to put my glasses on. That will help, who have intellectual disabilities. In 2012, she sustained a spinal cord injury in a car accident. Mother to a 16-month-old at the time, the accident and subsequent injury gave her an interesting perspective on parenting and having a disability. Marjorie believes that focusing on our strengths of character can lead to living a fulfilling life. With her family, she learned to be a solution finder to make her world more accessible. Isn't that the truth? Her memoir with lessons learned will be published in 2022. You can follow her and listen to her inspirational speeches on her social media accounts, and they're all linked down below in the description box. And before I forget, I didn't mention to any new subscribers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, because I always get out our hand. Our hand is going to tell us here somewhere down below to press the subscribe button and, of course, the like button. If you enjoy this broadcast, I would be happy if you could like, share, and subscribe to those that you love and care about, because Marjorie has a great story for us today. Where did it all start, Marjorie, for you, did you find in your life?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that I always was someone who is very active and physical. I love to play, different sports. And I had the belief that I could achieve and do anything that I put my mind to. So, with just plain grit, and you could see behind me, there's a wall of inspiration, and grit is part of it, and perseverance is part of it. Because I really did feel that I was someone who, like a dog on a bone, would just like work through anything and achieve everything that she wanted to. And so that was my mindset. And so it happened then, I turned 30. I was in a relationship. He didn't want to have a child, and I really wanted to become a mom. So I left that man, and, with grit and determination and perseverance, realized that I could do it on my own. So I became a single mom by choice a few years after that. And so, we talk about backup plan here. So I thought I had it all. And so I was like, I'm a single parent. I need to have a will in case I die. It needs to be super clear who's going to take care of my child, who's going to, how he's going to get my money, my house, and so forth. So I thought I was like, all prepared, because I knew I had my backup plan in case I died. And then when he was 16 months old, after a week of a lot of fun with my whole family and my parents' cottage, I was going back to work, so back to Montreal. My son was staying a little longer with my sister and my parents. And on the way over, my car hit black ice. And at the first sway, I knew that was it. I knew that day was my day to die. And And at first I felt very okay with that. I was like, you know what? We all die someday. Today's a pretty good day. The sun is out. I spent a whole week of so much fun with my most favorite people in the world. My son is safe with my parents and my sister. They'll take care of him and everything will be beautiful for him. And as I said that or thought that in my head, I realized, well, hold on a second. I sort of like created him on my own. And I had made promises, in a way to him to say that I was going to be there to make sure that he's safe and that he grows up, fully loved.
And supported.
And supported. Yeah. And so I said, I can't die. I just can't. I have to live. That's when, I saw.
It's really amazing how all of this goes through your mind in seconds.
Oh, quarter of second.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think that it was a few seconds, but it's crazy. And I could go on because it was like so clear in my head. And I just know that, it ended with me thinking about Thomas and saying his name. And I then lost consciousness and I was hit, obviously. And I woke up according to the papers, like the file that they have from the car accident. I woke up probably 20 minutes after the impact. And when I woke up, I could barely see. My vision was very blurry. My hearing was very muffled, so I couldn't hear very much. And my legs felt like marshmallows. And it was like, I had pins and needles. And it's funny because, spoiler alert, I have a spinal cord injury. And right now, as I'm talking about what it was in the car and how my legs felt like pins and needles, my whole legs are right now feeling like pins and needles up to my toes. A similar feeling than I had in the car. But and so then I realized that I couldn't move or feel my arms. And that's when I really got scared because I was like, well, dying would have been okay because I had a will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't scared of dying. But then all of a sudden I was scared of not being able to move my arms. Because what would that mean? How could I take care of my son if I couldn't move anything below my neck? And really, it was below my neck.
And yourself.
And myself. Yeah, exactly. But I think at that point, I was very, very focused on Thomas. And so I was like, I need to have my arms back. And right before the impact, I had sort of asked for God to live. And I'm not very spiritual, but at that time I called on God. And when I realized that I couldn't move my arms, I called on God again. And I sort of said, you have to give me back my arms because I need to be able to hug him. And then I said it again, you have to give me back my arms because that's the only way I could hug him. And you have to give me back my arms because I want to raise him. And the last time that I asked, I said, please give me back my arms. I'll promise I'll make it okay. And so I sort of made that promise of being okay, which I have to say, I wasn't very, very good at keeping that promise. I'm struggling every day. Certainly at the beginning was harder, and there's moments in the past 10 years, because it's been 10 years, where I wasn't able to fulfill that promise. But my arms came back. And they came back fully. So I have full strength on my arms. My spine got hit in the neck, but not as severely as it got hit in the middle of my back. And that's why, below my armpits to my toes, I'm paralyzed. And that's how it started, really.
When did your arm feeling start coming back? Right away, or if
Yeah.
slowly?
No, it came back like right away. After saying it the fourth time,
Oh, nice.
yeah, I felt my fingers move. And right away I said, oh, you have to stop moving because obviously something really, really bad happened. If you move, you might injure it again, and you don't want that.
So do you know what you did when you slid? Did you go straight forward and keep going around in a circle, or did you go off, or?
Yeah, I went off. So I went, there's a sway to the left, and that's like often when I tell the story, that's the first thing. It starts with a sway on the left, and that's when my thoughts start. And then there's a sway on the right. And as I swayed on the right, so I knew there was a car behind me, and I knew that from before I hit black ice. And I knew that because I felt like they were like really too close to me from like comfort. But I was driving at 80 kilometers an hour on a road that I could go up to 90. I knew there was a pickup truck coming the other way because I had also seen him. And then when I did the sway to the right, I realized that there was sort of like a little hill. And so basically my car it couldn't go anywhere on the right because of sort of that hill. And what the car did is a 90-degree turn as if I was turning. And so basically the pickup truck hit exactly in the back of the car and hit exactly where my son would have been if he had been with me.
Mm-hmm. And then spun you around, I guess, once he hit you, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know after that because, I was unconscious during that whole impact. Yeah.
So the seatbelt is supposed to save you.
Yeah.
What do you think happened? Was it just the impact from the side that you think did it, or?
Well, actually, and I can't prove it, but my thought has always been that because I was hit so hard on the side, like the seatbelt is there to protect you, like from coming forward and backwards, to sort of hold you there. In my case, I got hit, and so the impact was on the side to side. And I believe there was also a, how do we call them? Airbag.
Yes.
On the side of my door. And an airbag in my in the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a combination of all of that. It just like prevented me from doing a, I guess, normal movement, or it pushed me further. And the spine, with the sort of got severed to a point, or got hit that way from side to side. And our body is not meant to move that way. And
right.
It was a high impact. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very surprising when you see some vehicles in a car accident and they basically walk out, and then some of them don't even look that bad and they pass away. None of it really makes any sense sometimes.
No, it doesn't.
But yeah, so you just laid there and waited for the emergency to come, and you didn't wake up until they were there?
Well, actually, from my memory, when I was in the car, and I was like getting, like doing my diagnostic in a way, I heard a man's voice, and in my memory, this is the driver of the pickup truck. And in my memory, and don't ask me how I know, it's maybe like things that I've heard but didn't realize. I think he was sort of a paramedic who had just finished his shift and he was going home. And so he actually called, I guess, his colleagues to come. And as I was doing the diagnostic, I could hear him sort of say, "Oh, don't worry, don't move. I called 911, everybody's coming." And so I know that we were 3 cars. So the car behind me also got into the car accident. And he was basically sort of walking between the 2 cars. I don't know, I know that he's fine. I don't know what happened with the people, in the other car, but I don't think they were hit as badly as me, because when you get hit like that in Quebec, in my province, there's, pretty much like one trauma hospital. And so I was the only one that day. So I know that the other person didn't get hit the same way. Right. So he was telling me not to move, and then I would come in and out of consciousness. So to prevent myself from moving and from injuring myself further, I felt that by having my eyes closed, it would prevent me from having sort of
a visual.
If you see something, well, yeah. And if you see something on the corner of your eye, you'll want to turn your head. And I didn't want to turn my head because I sort of figured, that it had to do something with my spine. And I'm not a doctor, but, or a medical doctor. But in psychology, we do study, anatomy to some extent. And so I knew that much, right? That I needed to be careful. And so when the firefighters and the ambulance came, I was basically sort of lying on my side in the car. So I was really my head was resting on the passenger seat in my car. My legs were still on the pedals. And and then they opened the door, my door, and then they opened the passenger door, and I had an ambulance worker there, and he put sort of something around my neck. He asked me questions and I answered. I told them about my legs, that, they felt like marshmallows, and I had, the arms, and he was basically coaching me and sort of telling me what the other guys were doing.
And they didn't have to cut you out or anything. They could pull you out.
No, I think they had to work a bit on the car
to get you out.
Yeah, and that's why this guy was beside my ear and sort of telling me not to worry.
That's nice. They're so good at what they do. I don't know how they do it. Even with mine, they were, "I'm trying to make her laugh," they kept saying to the other guy. "I'm trying really hard to make to change it." They're just very, very good at trying to get you to calm.
Yeah. And not be scared, I guess.
Marjorie, it brings back all those same feelings, but of course, there's nothing worse than sliding, I find, because you have absolutely no control. And you're not sure what it's going to do. You don't know what your tires are going to do or what the road is. Is it going to get better? Is it you're going to keep sliding? Or it's just an awful, awful feeling. And basically watching your life in front of your eyes. And I think for me, I don't know about you, but I can see how you were positioned all cockeyed in the car, of course. But the smells, I think you remember the sounds of the people talking, but the smells is what got me too, that you can't get that out of your mind.
Well, see, that's interesting because in some of the speeches that I do, there's one that was called Love, and it was really recounting the last those minutes that I just shared with you guys. And as I was writing the speech, I was trying to put in as much details as I could so that whoever would listen to the speech would sort of like really feel like they were in the car with me. And the smell, I have got nothing. It smelled nothing. It was like that sense did not exist in the car. Yet I knew a lot about my eyes. I was very aware of my hearing, and of course, like anything sensory in terms of like my arms and my legs, what I was feeling, but nothing about the smell. So I have no idea. I don't even know, like, because I knew the firefighters were there probably to get me out of the car. So they're the one who usually sort of destroy the car to make it open and stuff. And, was there fire? I don't know. Was there gas? I have no idea. Smell was just not there for me.
Well, that could be a good thing, because I'll tell you, you can't, that smell of that memory in my mind is stuck in there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of eerie. It's a combination of the airbag powder and the motor.
Yeah.
And it's a very eerie, dark smell.
Yeah.
And so thank goodness you didn't have that, because when you close your eyes, it's, what you would feel.
Yeah. Well, see, for me, it's the whoosh. It's that feeling of like that first, like losing control that has been haunting my dreams and that have been haunting part of my life. So of course, after the injury, when I was ready to I'm talking months after, to be, in a car again, every time, like if there was a little whoosh, I was back in my car reliving it, which was very difficult because there was a few times, my dad was driving and we were going to see my sister who lives about 7 hours away from us. And it was like winter, and if there's a little bit of wind, that makes the car to just like, and the tires are still like on the road, but it's sort of like that gust of wind just makes the car move a little bit. And I'm like back, like that was like my traumatic trigger. And, if my mom was driving and, again, sort of that whoosh, or turning left, I couldn't turn left for like, oh my God, years. I think it's just in the recent years that I can turn left when you have to cross another lane, because every time I turned left, I could see the cars sort of coming. And that was like my other trigger, which was, that. So every time that I was in Montreal and I needed to turn left, I would just do like a roundabout in terms of like doing blocks, turning right, so that I could like go to the street left that I needed to. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's funny what our brain sticks with us, and you can't get it out after.
You can't get it
out. There.
Yeah.
So how long were you in the hospital for?
So I was in the hospital for a month, and then I was in rehab for 5 months. In the hospital, I had amazing care for the first 10 days. I was in the ICU unit, which meant that I had a nurse, just one nurse, one patient, because they wanted to make sure that we breathe properly and that everything, because I underwent surgery that evening. They had to consolidate my spine in both my neck and in my back. And so I was in surgery for about 8-9 hours. And then I was in the ICU.
Did they fuse it?
They did, yeah. Exactly. So I have about 3 vertebrae fused in my neck and 4 in my back. Yeah.
And then you went into rehabilitation after that, after you got.
Yes. And so rehab was an interesting time, because in between ICU and rehab, I had a few weeks on the floors where there are too few nurses for too many patients. And that was like, there's part where I have trauma also there. When they sat me in the wheelchair and positioned me, and the pain, it was like torture. And, like those movies where you see like torture scenes in them, mid ages, and where they try to dismember people. That's how I felt on the wheelchair. And they could leave me in the wheelchair for 2 hours because they were doing their rounds and they couldn't get to me. So you imagine that really incredible pain for that time. And so that was the hospital. And when I left the hospital, I was sort of happy, because I was like, well, maybe, it's not going to hurt as much when I'm in rehab. And I'm lucky, because yes, that's exactly what happened. So rehab was a place where I felt I was regaining some control.
Mm-hmm.
So from a woman who was controlling pretty much every aspect of her life, to someone who lost control in the car, who had no control in the hospital, all of a sudden I was empowered again in terms of like figuring what's next. And the hour that was the most precious to me was the hour that I had with my physiotherapist. Because that was like the hour where, oh my God, like I would grunt, I would swear at him, I would like just give it all. It was like back at the gym, where, he would say, jump, and I would say, how high? Obviously he wouldn't say jump because I couldn't jump, but he would tell me like, okay, we're doing pull-ups, and I have a great story actually with pull-ups, because he made me do 101 just out of pure motivation, and wanted to see what my grit was, how far I could go. And so that was like my saving grace. That was like my precious hour. Some of the other hours were painful. Some painful in a way that I needed to go through them to grow. And so those hours were with my occupational therapist, because with her and her aide, they had to put me in a situation where I would get scared, or where I was scared, scared of falling, or scared of facing sort of like the emptiness. And I have an example where at one point I'm sitting sort of on a bed, and they put a Kleenex box on my feet, and they asked me to go and pick it up. Oh. And I was telling them, I can't, because I can't feel my legs. So I can't sort of like go forward, because I feel like I'm going to fall, and I don't have any arms. How am I going to do that? And they said, well, just figure it out. Pick up the Kleenex box. And one of my biggest fear is heights. And on a trip, like years before, I had like tried to conquer my fear of heights by doing by rappelling down a 60-foot cliff. Oh. And it was exactly the same feeling. I was facing like, this is like a 60 feet cliff that I have to go over to get that Kleenex box. And oh my God, I cried like, I think all the tears that I had in my body. I did it because, again, like they knew I was someone very strong on grit. And that if I was put in front of a challenge, I would sort of like get it. But it was really, really tough. And they put me in that situation in front of my sister. And so I didn't want to
you didn't want to show weakness.
Yeah. And so I just,
that's hard.
That was hard. And so physio was great.
Yeah.
OT hour wasn't so great. Well, it was great because I could regain. That was sort of the way that I needed to regain sort of some of my autonomies. That was great in that space. And then they sent me to psychology, and that was not great at all. I fired my psychologist after the second hour, and my whole staff said, "Oh, but you need to." And I was like, "Yes, I do, but there's no way I'm going back there." And the reason why is that I felt like my life was dark enough, and I lived my whole day, my whole 24 hours was darkness all the time, except for that hour in physio and for the time that I had with my son. My parents were amazing, and so they would bring Thomas to me every day after his nap. And so I would see him. And so those were the two, sort of things in my day that brought lightness. Everything else was like as if we're turning the light off. And
you had
in psychology,
to look forward. You had to look forward to it.
Exactly. So, but psychology, they wanted me to talk about like the accident and what that meant and my losses and whatever. And I was like, fuck no. I live my losses every single minute, except for those 2 hours that I have sort of light a little bit. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not like rehashing darkness over darkness. And that is something that's profoundly important in my story, because a few years ago, so we're talking like 8 years after the accident, I learned about positive psychology. So even being a psychologist, I didn't even realize that there was sort of this thing called positive psychology. And I didn't know about character strength either. And it's when I started learning about that I realized that is what I needed in rehab. I would have needed someone to talk to me about my strength of love. I survived the car accident because I loved my son so much. And I was working so hard in physio because I love my son so much, right? I wanted to regain as much autonomy as I could. And so that was very empowering to see or to feel like, hey, I have strength in me. And we all do. We all have 24 character strength that we could tap into when we need. And every day we actually tap into, some of our strength, and we each have a different profile. But it was like very empowering for me to feel like, my love for my son was something that could get me out of the hump, and that, my love of learning could get me hope, because I was learning about all these things that I was actually powerful or, capable to tapping into. And so it was very, that was something that changed, I think, my whole perspective.
Your whole outlook.
My whole outlook, yeah.
I don't know why some counselors and that sort of thing bring up all of that. It's like they bring it and they have to hash it over and over and over. Yeah. Whereas, like you said, when you start looking at, like, I always talk about when something like this happens, you feel like you're in this horrible, dark room with no light. And I feel like I'm walking around this room trying to find something that's going to open, or like you feel so trapped, blind, and you're going in blind and you don't know. And the fact that I was a psychologist didn't help me, like it wasn't like, because I was the one going through it. So it was very different. And you mentioned sort of, you don't know why psychologists or counselors, sort of do that. Well, because a good chunk of us are trained to do exactly that. You deal with trauma by talking about it, by, sort of going through it, except that for me, that was way too soon. I couldn't
I didn't have distance from that story. And so, you know, for sure, if there was like something that I could do to change the system, I would say that psychologists who work in the acute care at that point, they need to just learn about positive psychology and use that and use those tools and just, you know, empower me and not disempower people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I found personally with that same kind of story that when you're in it, you don't know what's wrong with you. You know, you just know how you feel. And all of these exterior things coming at you, whether it's a counselor or a psychologist or rehab, you need it to be positive to be able to tap into that strength that you have, because you don't need to be brought down anymore. You're already in this dark space.
Yeah.
And that's what I found anyways.
Yeah. And for me, I felt like my whole life had crumbled. You know, it's crazy how like the dichotomy, or like I had my house, I was a homeowner, I had my career, I was doing, like, I taught in universities, in 2 different universities. I was, you know, a manager. I was working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I was a single parent. I mean, you couldn't be more, you know, achieved. And because I am white and well-educated and I was able-bodied and so forth, I was pretty high on the, you know, social status, you know, stairs.
Yeah.
And the accident sort of brought me down, because that's when I realized, shit, you know, when you have a disability, you're not so high on that status anymore. You go down a few steps, and you go down a few steps because sometimes people don't even acknowledge me. So I'll take, like, for example, a COVID situation where I was going to get vaccinated, and I had heard that I could go for my second shot. And I'm in the, you know, waiting line to get the second shot. And I have a question because they're pulling out people from the line. So I'm like, well, why are they pulling out people? I need to find out. Well, the man who was basically answering everybody's question answered every single person's question. He would sometimes look at me straight in the eye and still not ask me if I had a question, even though I was in front of him for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And it was like I was, you know, invisible. And he could just look through me, not at me. And that was very difficult for me, and still sometimes very difficult, because I get like, hey, I have the same values as anybody else. I have the same right. Why aren't you acknowledging me? And sometimes being acknowledged is also, you know, like, don't stand in my parking spot. My parking spot is there for a reason, because it's dangerous for me to be in a wheelchair. I'm short, so cars don't see me. If they back up, they get, you know, into me very easily.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, my parking spot is right beside the entrance for a reason. Don't take it, you know? And I feel that there's a lot of things that people don't realize, and that's why they do it. And that, you know, I hope that if they knew, they would change their behavior. But so for me, it was difficult for that reason too, because I felt like I couldn't, you know, pick up my career the same way I would have. I mean, I really felt like I was destined for great things, and then the accident happened, and I really do feel like my career stopped. And, you know, maybe I'm destined to great things, but it's going to be different. And I think at the beginning, it was very difficult to sort of go through all those secondary losses that you don't imagine after an accident.
You don't realize you have to grieve?
No, I didn't realize I had to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
And so the tsunami of emotions for me, you know, happened 5 years after my accident. And that's when I really sort of like, I got hit a second time. I call it my mental health crash. So I had my car crash, and then I had my mental health crash 5 years later.
What do you think brought it on? Is the realization?
Yeah, the realization, and the fact that I was, something was happening at work, and I realized that I couldn't keep up. And work had been the only role that had not changed since the accident. So I held on to that role, with both hands, because it was sort of like, that's the one thing that is exactly the same, and when it wasn't possible anymore, that's when I lost everything. Yeah, that was the trigger.
Everything that was normal.
Everything
so
that was
speak.
normal. Exactly. Yeah. Quote unquote.
Yeah. How about now? How has it shifted? Was this dark space that you went into kind of like mine?
Well,
Where
the way
it's
you
like this
described it,
dark
yeah,
room.
it's exactly that. You described it exactly. I have a similar experience for sure. It was exactly like you're in a dark room and you're blindfolded on top of it. So there's really like nothing that you could see.
And there's so much fear. I found so much fear in the room. Almost like if somebody had strapped you to a chair and blindfolded you and put you in this dark room. That's kind of how you feel.
Yeah.
And you're still trying to make it around the room, trying to find that little smidgen of light that you can kind of access. And once I was able to grab the door handle and feel that I could pull the door open and there was light in the cracks, that's when I finally could feel like I could move towards the light.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds kind of corny, but it is true.
Yeah. No, it's a similar, yeah. I think it's very well said or well described for sure. For me, that door handle was learning about positive psychology. Certainly felt like, there was not just light, but like how you feel the sun on your skin, like when it's like warm, when it's like springtime and gets like super warm. I mean, that's what I felt. And I felt like maybe there was, light at the end of the tunnel. And it was difficult because I had to manage like major depression as I was still raising Thomas, and I didn't want him to be affected more than he had already been affected. So I was looking okay in front of him, and I was looking okay, I think, in front of a lot of people. Not many people knew that all the struggles that I had in my head. And for me, it was, all my life, if I wanted something, I worked hard at it, and I was a hard worker, and I would get to like the goal that I had. And in this case, no matter how hard I worked, I was still paralyzed.
You can't change it.
I couldn't change it. There was nothing that I could do. And I remember having conversation with my physiotherapist, and he was saying to me, like, if there was 1 inch of a chance that you could walk, you would have been the one to make it to walking. But it was just, that's how spinal cord injury works. Once it's bruised and it doesn't grow back. And so it's done. You have to put your energy somewhere else, or else you're wasting it to some extent.
Because once it's there, you can't, it doesn't get better or worse, I guess, so to speak.
Not physically.
No. What do you think that changed it now? What has given you this positive outlook? Because when you felt prepared for death, you obviously weren't prepared for this long journey.
No.
And in your backup plan, we talk about, are you prepared for the unexpected? You could have your house ripped away from you in an instant. You could have your body change in an instant. But did having, who was paying your bills for you while you were going through all of this? Like, it's such a difficult journey if you're not prepared. Where's the key? Where's the cat food? Who has the vet, or whatever your life consists of?
Yeah. Ironically, when I had signed, my mortgage for my mortgage in my house, I took in insurance, obviously, and there was one box that I forgot to tick. And that one box, and that one box, you see me coming, was in case of a severe injury. And so they couldn't do anything. So I still had to pay my mortgage. That was like an interesting twist of the story. I was lucky, again, enough that I have parents who just love their children more than anything in the world. And so they moved in my house. I'm also lucky because I had work insurance in terms of my salary. So there was still income coming in, which allowed to pay for, all the big things. But they basically raised my child for the first 6 months when I was in rehab in the hospital. And after that, there's a lot of bills that they paid until I was able to go back to work.
And to figure out what bills there are. I mean, that's a challenge.
Yeah, that is a challenge. And again, in Quebec, we're lucky, and it depends on, which province, because we have an automobile insurance that we have to take, and it's mandatory. Everybody who drives has to have that. And so the society who holds the insurance pays for certain things. And so for sure, in comparison to any other person who has gone through spinal cord injury in a different way, I'm lucky because there are certain things like adaptations in my house that are paid for by the auto insurance. But there's a lot of things that are not paid and that are not considered. And one of them is your parenting role. And so when I was telling, the insurance, well, my mom comes to see me every day. She has to drive and she has to pay for parking every day because she brings my son every day, because my son, who's 16 months old, will forget me if he doesn't come every day. And I will, it's going to be it for me if I'm not a mom after all of this.
Yeah.
And so it was no, and I had to fight for every single thing that was related to my parenting role. I had to fight. And sometimes, I stopped fighting because it was just too long. I remember when Thomas went to started school, for me to drive him to school, I needed to go into a street that is blocked off usually. And I went to the ombudsman of the city to ask for permission, and I was still rejected. But you can only fight for so long, and it's really hard to fight against insurances. And I mean, in my case, I thought I had everything prepared, and then, it's like you say, you have to be prepared for even the things that you don't think of, because in all my life, I knew I could die and I need to, organize my affairs for that. But I never realized that I could actually live differently, to a point where everything, I mean, we had to sell my house. I had to move into a new house that we could adapt. And those have cost, and they have cost also for my family. I mean, my parents, sold their apartment in Montreal to be able to come and live above me so that they could, take care of me and my son if I needed to. They had to sell their cottage because nobody wanted to go back there, certainly not me. I didn't want to take that road again. And so there was cost there. And, there's cost in terms of like, they were both retired, but they could have been working. And then, my mom was basically, she was doing childcare and Marjorie care pretty much all day.
Parenting.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in a different situation where she had been working, then what would have happened then? And if I hadn't had my parents, what would have happened to my ability to maintain custody of my child? I worked in the system where I advocated for parents with intellectual disabilities and saw all the discrimination that there was in systems. And I felt like it could happen to me. When I was in the hospital, I was always looking to see who was coming in my bedroom, my hospital room, because I felt like anybody could be someone from child welfare coming to assess if I can raise my son. And any new professional, I felt like I also had to scrutinize a little bit to make sure that they wouldn't be the one calling child welfare. And in my head, and so, I'm talking like 7 days after my accident, I had an intervention plan organized in my head because I had that fear was true and real about like, I'm a single parent now with a physical disability, with a house that is not adapted. And so raising my child in those conditions are impossible for me. They're even dangerous because I can't sort of like, he could go into the stairs, but I can't follow him. I can go pick him up. And those are things that you don't think about, right? Sort of how are you going to organize things around your child? So, certainly in terms of like having a backup plan, you have to think about all those details. And there are many.
Well, and unfortunately, everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them. So they're not going to worry about it. But my sense is, why not have the photos of every room in your house? Why not have the receipts if you have them? Why not put those little few documents together in one place so that they're all together when somebody needs them? It's all of these kinds of little things. And I'm not sure how to help people who think it's not going to happen. Because, of course, in our podcasts all the time, we talk about something will. We know something will.
Yeah.
We just don't know what.
That's right. Or when.
But we know it will. So why don't we prepare? It's like, it's like once you get engaged, you're going to get married. So you start preparing.
Yeah.
Once you book a trip, you're going on the trip, so you start preparing. But we don't talk about death. We don't talk about sickness, and we definitely don't talk about loss.
No.
And it's really unfortunate, because thank you for being so open and talking about your feelings about this horrible spinal cord injury affects so many people, athletes, accidents, military, yes. And it's a real change of your whole life. It truly is life changing.
Truly.
And a car accident can be as slight as not being able to walk the same, but it's the emotional part of the whole section that's even like, only we see things that are physical, but it's what's going on in your head is even more powerful.
Yeah. And I want to say, like, I've been living with a spinal cord injury for 10 years. I don't want people to sort of like end, listening to this and sort of say, oh, poor her, poor her. It is definitely a change, and it's definitely like it totally reshaped my life, and my family's life and so forth. But, I'm here, and I'm engaged in what Thomas does, and I'm engaged in, my family and what they do. And I have a lot of loving people that surround me. So I don't want to, people to sort of go and think that people with spinal cord injury can't have beautiful, fulfilling life, because that's not true. We can. And so, but it is, sort of a huge, huge adaptation for sure.
Absolutely. What kind of final message would you like to tell the listeners?
That anything can happen at any point. To be prepared doesn't make it so or make it true. It's just because it is true. Tick all those boxes. Don't forget, really verify, because that could have also a huge impact. And, I think over the years, we've gotten people aware of sort of having a will and testament, in case of death, but do know that other things can happen. It's not just about dying, that we get ready for different things. And then the rest, it makes you not have to worry about it so much. Because certainly, like in the first 6 months, I couldn't deal with any other like bad news. So it had to somehow run smoothly. And I was lucky that my dad could pick up. And he was a co-signer on my house, and he was a co-signer on some of like my my bank stuff. So, that
Worked out
went smoothly. It worked out, I didn't have to because I could have been in the coma for, days and
months.
it's just months. And my parents, were grieving also. And my mom didn't sleep for like days. Neither did my dad. My dad, got old faster because of the accident. I'm sure of it. And so, when you have to deal with somebody else's sort of accident and so forth, and you're the one who has to pick up sort of the slack, then
the pieces
you need to have information. And sometimes, having that backup plan would certainly be helpful for them.
Yeah, a family conversation. We have worksheets on just having those family conversations of not just about death, but it could be, well, what kind of care would you like to have? Where would you like to live? Do you want to be staying with the family? Do you want to go into a home? Like all of these different topics that can be talked about. Like, if you're left alone, where would you like to live?
What happens to your kids? Who's going to take care of your kids?
All of those things. What do you want it to look like? Because it might not be that you're not here to answer. You might be here, but still can't answer. So
that's right.
Yeah, thank you so very much. And thank you so very much for being open and honest and the courage to rehash this every single time. It's a beautiful, beautiful story of if people would just listen. I think it's taught you to be better prepared for the unexpected, but I see in you that it's prepared you to be present in the moment, more so, to treasure every precious moment.
Yes.
And that's what we talk about.
Yeah.
Because it means everything.
Yeah. It's a beautiful summary, actually, because that's exactly what it did. It made me grateful and appreciative. And I do notice, beauty a whole lot more than I did before. And I often, use the metaphor of a high-speed train that I was on before my accident. And so when you're in the high-speed train and you look out the window, you can't really see anything because it's all blurry because you go too fast. And now I'm in a little train that sort of takes its time, but I can definitely look out the window and see, the beautiful scenery that's there.
It's like being on that San Francisco trolley.
Yes.
It's like, honk, honk. Okay,
That's
like,
right.
chugga, 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 and then stop. Oh, I get to enjoy this. And then chugga, chugga, chugga. Okay, let's stop.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh, the analogies that we come up with. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you. I know, Marjorie, I hope this can help someone out there listening, because it really, truly, you're amazing. And thank you for being, I'm so sorry for you having to go through all of this, but you're just words of wisdom for everyone. You really are. And thank you for being that, for being like that for others.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Tina.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope that everybody, I don't want to give up this story. It truly is, could be a movie, because it's somebody's journey through what they've, 10 years probably doesn't seem very long, but it's been long enough now that you can start hopefully seeing some of the beauty of everything.
Yes.
Yeah. And because I tell you, there are times when you don't see any beauty at all. And it's just a matter of getting through that trauma part of it. And with all of your wisdom from your learning and researching, and I'm sure you have more great, better things that you're going to be doing in life. You're here for a reason.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, listeners. I hope that we've inspired you and motivated you with Marjorie's beautiful story, and that it shows that you too could have a unique plan, and that it's essential that you do make whatever that looks like for you. Your backup plan app puts your life all in one place, and because you don't know, expect the unexpected. You don't know what tomorrow will bring. I always end with, if you're thinking of someone right now listening to the show that you love and care about, reach out, pick up the phone. We still have those things called phones. Text, Skype, Zoom, whatever it is, but tell them how much you love and care about them today, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. So thank you, my listeners. Love each and every one of you. Danke fürs Erhören, meine deutsche Freunde auch. Thank you, my German friends. I always end with Carol Burnett, because she could always make us laugh. And I'm sure you know who Carol Burnett is, Marjorie.
Yes.
I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes a time we have to say so long. So long, my friends. Stay safe, be kind. Till next time. Bye for now.